Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Euskadi once again, or the Basqueland as you would say in English, the region in the north of Spain. But we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles as well, but I think it's fair to say that these days this brewery is best known for their different kinds of IPAs. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a slightly different style. It is one that I've had from them before and I've been impressed with, but this is also quite a highly rated beer. So I have to say I'm quite curious to see whether this one lives up to the hype. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Hernani in Euskadi, Basqueland as I said earlier. And we're going to have a look at another beer from Basqueland Brewing, originally known as Basqueland Brewing Project. But this particular beer is called S'mores. It comes in at 11.5% ABV. It's an Imperial pastry stout with chocolate, marshmallow and graham crackers. So this beer arrived here in Sweden as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment at the very beginning of March in 2022, and it just kind of caught my eye because I hadn't had something from Basqueland in quite a wee while. But I think we've done 6 or 7 beers on the channel from these guys before. But I think when we're talking about the general Spanish craft beer scene, Basqueland Brewing are probably one of the better known breweries across the European continent these days. But generally speaking, the countries that have a go at craft beer making, having had quite a strong wine heritage, tend to be very good when it comes to that. Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Greece and Slovenia as well all seem to follow that kind of unwritten rule. So yeah, if you get the chance to try some Spanish beers, I highly recommend that you do. But yeah, nice to return to Basqueland Brewing after what seems like a good little while. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Basqueland Brewing before, and we will hopefully add some more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Spanish beers that I've reviewed for you, and I will see about making one for all the different Euskadian or Basqueland beers at some point in the future as well. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Basqueland Brewing once again then. So Basqueland Brewing were founded back in 2014 and they're based in Hernani in the Basque country, Euskadi, in northern Spain, and they're only about 20 kilometres actually from the French border. So the brewery was founded by 3 Americans. This is Kevin Patricio, who is the CEO, Benjamin Rotze, who is the Sales and Distribution Director, and also Benjamin Matz, who is the head brewer. But Kevin was the first to arrive in Euskadi, having met a girl while working as a chef in New York, and then moving back with her, and he opened his own cocktail bar and restaurant in the area. But while living there, he noticed that Basque had a big gap in the market for local beer, and the region was largely home to a number of cider breweries and wineries. But at this point, he decided that he wanted to start brewing some local beer, and so he invited his friend Ben Matz to join the project. So Ben Matz grew up in San Diego over in California, and at the age of 17 he bought his first home brewing kit, and from then on he was hooked on the idea of brewing for his profession for the rest of his life. But after working for Stone Brewing and Pizza Port in California, he went on, as well as Wentland, down in Mexico, he decided that he was going to move over to Euskadi, and so this is where things began to kick off. But the brewery started off by renting a modest facility in La Rioja, and they brewed batches of between 3,000 and 5,000 litres, which went very well. The locals were very receptive, as well as international people, and the company really started to gain some momentum. But at this point, they added Benjamin Rotzi to the team, and he takes care mostly of the business side of things when it comes to the brewery. But in July of 2015, they established their own brewing facility in the Acarregi industrial estate in Hernani to the south of San Sebastian, and they produced around 160,000 litres of beer there across 2016. Over the following years, they've expanded the brewery with new tanks and other infrastructure, and they now have a tap room on site as well that you can go and visit. And they've been getting their beers out there across the European continent ever since. As I said to you earlier, this brewery are known mainly for their different kinds of New England IPA, but there are a variety of styles coming out from there these days, and they have been doing quite a few of these kind of sweet pastry stouts in recent times, I have to say. But as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 310 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said to you, they are probably one of the best known names when it comes to the general Spanish craft beer scene, and definitely the biggest one when it comes to the Basqueland Euskadi as well. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Basqueland Brewing, formerly known as Basqueland Brewing Project, of course. So if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, a little bit different compared to what we've had from Basqueland before. But yeah, there you can see the Basqueland symbol. This used to be a little bit different because I'm sure it used to say Basqueland Brewing Project and it was slightly taller. But yeah, they have rebranded very slightly over the last few years. There you can see s'mores, of course, basically referring to the American toasted marshmallow type thing. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. Like I said to you, this beer was released at the start of March 2022 through Systembolaget as part of the Tillfällig temporary assortment here in Sweden. And yeah, I believe I want to say that I paid 60 Swedish kronor for this. So that is roughly €6, somewhere in the region of £5 sterling, and I guess in the region of like $7 American for those of you watching over there. But yeah, as we say, 11.5% ABV. This is a 440 milliliter can. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm very, very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. An 11.5% Imperial pastry stout with chocolate, marshmallow and graham crackers. So yeah, graham crackers of course are, yeah, they're just these little square biscuity things that you get over in America. Of course, we don't get them so much back home in the motherland of Scotland, although there are quite a few kind of similar things, I guess we could say. But yeah, let's get this guy out and into the glass then. Oh, spilling a little bit of it over the side there. The can was pretty full. But yeah, there we go. This does look pretty nice, to say. Got one or two pastry stouts at the moment actually that I'll be having a look at. But yeah, I think this can's decided it's going to drip a little bit, but there we go. Anyway, let me just line that up again so that my OCD is happy. But we've got most of it out and into the glass. So yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer has poured very, very nicely. But there is a solid finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium beige head on this one. Have a little look at that. Some big bumpy bubbles toward the top, but quite a few small, tiny little bubbles in there. But yeah, as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one has poured a lovely, dark, ebony, rosewood colour. If I shine the light through this, there's not even a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to the beer. It just looks pretty much black as night, black as this t-shirt. But yeah, it certainly looks the part. of an Imperial Stout. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in can affect the colour of the beer, but when it comes to stouts, the malts are inherently dark anyway, so it is really difficult to actually affect that colour with any of the adjuncts that you find. But there are 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass for this one, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of that head, but not too much in the way of visible carbonation active in this one. But in terms of what you would expect from the appearance of an Imperial Stout, there's nothing particularly surprising about this one, I guess we could say. But yeah, it looks like a rather nice beer. So yeah, I don't think we need to say any more about this one in terms of appearance. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we go with it. This should be quite interesting. I got a nice little sweet whiff out of it as I opened it up. But yeah, yeah. So aroma wise, I'm going to say straight away, you get a hell of a lot of marshmallow out of this beer. You can smell that big sweet candy marshmallow out of this beer all the way. As I've said before, I'm not a massive fan of pastry stouts, but I just got this one because I thought it sounded interesting. You know, roasted, s'mores roasted marshmallow and an Imperial Stout. I was always a big fan of the big sweet, milky Imperial Stouts, but yeah, some of the pastry stouts can be quite nice, but I'm not a great fan of the kind of granola type character you can get from some of them. But this one, as I say, it just caught my eye. I love a good sweet stout, and I love a good old school Russian Imperial Stout as well. But yeah, this one I'm going to say straight away, this is one of the sweetest smelling Imperial Stouts that I've come across in quite a wee while. So yeah, straight away with this one, it's all about that kind of sweet marshmallow type flavour. There's a good bit of that kind of candied red fruity character to it as well. Yeah, like a dessert stout, this one. Even sweeter than some of these kind of old school omnipoil things that you used to get back in the day. So yeah, one of the sweetest Imperial Stout aromas I've come across in quite a wee while. But let's see if we can kind of disseminate this beer a little bit more and describe the aroma a wee bit more in detail. So yeah, I mean, the backbone of the beer, you can smell a little bit of a kind of bread crusty, sort of cakey sort of vibe to it. So yeah, 1 or 2 little woody elements in there, that sort of cakey sponge type aroma. I do get quite a little bit of vanilla out of this one. You can certainly get a wee bit of a kind of drier cocoa nib quality to the beer as well. But yeah, it's very, very sweet. You get a lot of that kind of sweet lactosey sort of thing out of it. Quite a bit of the vanilla is coming out. You know, you get that milky lactosey vanilla type vibe. It gives you the impression of like a very sweet, milky and kind of candied fruity chocolate actually. This beer is really interesting. I don't get so much of the graham cracker sort of vibe out it, but yeah, a lot of chocolate and marshmallow. Like I say, the aroma of this beer is overwhelmingly sweet. I'm trying to figure out if I get any brown sugar from it. There's maybe a little bit of like a sweet kind of caramel in there, but yeah, as I say, this beer's interesting. There's a little slight touch of a woody backbone, maybe that's the kind of crackery sort of thing, but you get a lot of this kind of chocolate, cakey sponge out of the beer. A lot of vanilla, of course. Within that, there are 1 or 2 nutty elements to the beer as well, for sure. But yeah, you can get the cocoa nib dryness, some sweet caramel, and they're a little bit of a toasted brown sugary note as well. But yeah, I really like how the aroma in this one. Goes about its business. But the marshmallow, you just get this sweet candied. You get this sweet marshmallowy note out of it. That kind of thing. It reminds me of pink marshmallows. Actually, that's kind of what I get out of this beer. That sweet kind of pink candied strawberry kind of marshmallow aroma. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business is it's really nice actually. I very much like how that how all of that goes together in this beer. So it gets a big thumbs up from me on the malty kind of adjuncty side of things. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in there. In terms of yeasty notes, I do get a little bit of a kind of note, a little bit of a yeasty note of this one, but again, it's all about that cakey, spongy character. But yeah, the aroma works really nicely in this beer, so it's a big thumbs up from me, as I've said. On the hoppy side of things, then, I'm trying to figure out how much in the way of hoppy character we have in this beer. There's not all that much kind of coming out of this one. You get a little bit of a smooth, earthy character. There's a wee touch of a herbal thing, one or two light kind of floral notes, and also a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy vibe to the beer as well. But the green component of this beer is very smooth and rather mild in that sense. It's actually quite a straight shooting beer, this one, in many, many ways. The aroma isn't madly complex. It really, and as I say, the kind of sweet marshmallowy notes that you get out of it are the dominating feature. So yeah, the way that this goes together is quite interesting, to say the least. On the fruity side of things, then, I think the fruity part of the beer is the last thing we need to kind of comment on with it. So the fruity side of the beer is quite interesting. You certainly get a wee bit of that sharper, raisiny element to it. There's a wee bit of there's a sharper raisiny note to this one. You do get a nice kind of oily, plummy character. Yeah, there's a sharper raisiny element to it, a bit of a kind of plummy character. Underneath that, you do get a bit of that kind of drier figgy note to it, but also some nice, very, very nice, kind of, you get a rounder kind of blackberry out of this one, but a little bit of blackcurrant too. The fruity notes are quite kind of typical of a slightly sweeter stout. So yeah, a bit of raisin, bit of kind of drier plum, some fig underneath, an oily fig, juicier blackcurrant, and a bit of a blackberry. But yeah, behind that, of course, you've got a wee bit of this just candied strawberry thing in the marshmallow. That really dominates the aroma in this beer. But yeah, I really like how all of this goes together. I find this a really interesting proposition, to be honest with you, in terms of the aroma. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this one. So yeah, let's have a look at this. That's why it was pouring. The can didn't pop properly. That's annoying. There we go. Lost the little top. But yeah, that's why it poured and spilt everywhere, just because the wee can top didn't really open it properly. But anyway, let's have a taste of this beer. This one is the S'mores, an 11.5% Imperial pastry stout with chocolate, marshmallow and graham crackers from Basqueland Brewing in Hernani, Euskadi in the north of Spain. Slàinte, skål, cheers, or as they say in the local language, topa. Cheers. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's it's actually, first impression of it is a lot more kind of bitter and granola-like than the aroma would have you believe. I thought this one was going to be a very big, kind of sweet, almost milky stout, but it really has that sort of cakey granola backbone to it. So that's quite interesting. Yeah. It is well balanced. I mean, as I've said to you, pastry stouts are not my favourite sub-style of imperial stouts. I mean, I love coffee imperial stouts, I love the old school kind of big bitter Russian imperial stouts, and I love like an imperial milk stout as well. Pastry stouts, they have been growing on me a little bit. But as I say, I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of granola and more sort of cakey, spongy type bases that you get out of the pastry stouts. Pastry sours is a style that I do struggle to get my head round a little bit as well. But it is a nice enough and enjoyable beer, and you can tell that it's well made. Like I say, I got this one partly because, as I say, I'm always open to the idea of educating myself more in styles and things like this. And also because I like Basqueland Brewing Project, I like what they do, and I like, I always liked s'mores when I went over to America. And it's a well done pastry stout, but as I say, I'm still unconvinced about this exact style bracket, if you like. But it is, maybe this beer could make it grow on me a little bit, I have to say that. So yeah, my first impression of this beer is, it's got, pardon me, took a bit of that down the wrong way there. Breathed in as the liquid was in my mouth. Silly move. But yeah, so you've got this backbone of the kind of granola sort of thing. You've got the cakey character on top of it, then you've got this kind of sweetness. But it's interesting. It is quite interesting how it goes together. I think I need to try more of these pastry stouts and just see if they grow on me, because in fairness I have avoided them a little bit, because the ones that I've tried I've been like, it's all right, but as I say, I don't like them as much as I do the coffee Imperials or the old RISs or the Imperial milks. But it's a night, you can tell straight away with this one. I will say that there are people who enjoy this style a lot, and you can tell that this one is really, really nicely made. But yeah, first impression of it is it's quite, it's a dry sort of cakey stout, this one. It does have a wee bit more bitterness to it as well, which is interesting. But let's try and break the flavour down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So, yeah, the flavour for me, it's got this really, almost slightly sickly sweet marshmallow, kind of candy marshmallow type quality to it, which I find really interesting. But the back, let's focus on just breaking this beer down as we always do. So the middle third of your palate, you get that nice kind of, as we say, kind of roasty toasty black malty backbone there. You can feel that straight away in this beer. There are one or two malty elements to it as well. So yeah, a little bit of a roasty toasty black malty backbone. You do get a bit of that kind of granola thing that I always find is quite prominent in Imperial Stouts, but you get a lot of that spongy, slightly toasted edge, cakey character to it. Those three things are the backbone of the beer. The roasty toasty black malt, the roasty toasty black malt, that more kind of brown bready character, and the kind of cakey note out of it. Yeah, the cakey sponge character is really interesting for sure. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. It's as I say, this is a well done pastry stout, and beer is always subjective. Different people like different styles. Pastry stouts, say, I'm just not sure they're exactly for me. But within that kind of cakey sponge layer, you get a few of the different complexities. You can feel toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you start to get the kind of vanilla notes out of the beer. You start to get the kind of marshmallow as well, that sort of oily, marshmallowy type flavour. But towards the back of that kind of cakey, spongy layer, that's where you get the sort of cocoa nib and chocolatey vibe out of it. So that's interesting in this one. This pastry stout for me comes across as very spongy and cakey in a lot of ways. And yeah, when you take this beer in, it comes in very, very smooth. What you'll find is you just get a little kind of ping on the tongue, and you just get this really candied, sweet vibe out of it. So on top of that kind of cakey, spongy layer that I'm describing for you, you can taste the kind of oats doing their thing on this one. You can smell that sort of smooth, you can taste that kind of smooth oaty layer on top of the cake. And you just get this, that's where a lot of the kind of sweetness and that kind of slightly candied strawberry, red fruity type thing from the marshmallows coming out. Maybe in the dead centre of your palate, you've got a little circle there where you have this kind of leathery, where you have this sort of leathery caramel coming out of the beer. And the leathery caramel that you get out of it, that will be from some of the barley malt that's in it, but that indicates to me a longer wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, of course, as we say, the more the sugars caramelise. But you've got this little circle in the middle of your palate where you get this really leathery brown sugary caramel, and that just sits there on top of the kind of spongy layer. But behind that, of course, you've almost got a layer of like a dry coat. On top of the cakey notes, as we said, you get that smooth oaty layer, but on top of the oats, you've got this kind of dry cocoa nibby type layer, and then an oily circle. Yeah, and like an oily circle of a kind of leathery brown sugary character. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business in that sense is quite interesting. It is an interesting beer, and it's certainly testing my palate. But like I say, I'm just not sure how much I like these kind of these Imperial pastry stouts. But this one is well done, and I'm sure those who are into this style will enjoy this beer. And it's, you know, Basqueland Brewing. These guys are a great brewery. So yeah, definitely try their beers. But I think that's everything we need to say about this one in terms of the middle third of the palate, which admittedly is the most complex part of the beer. Let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up there, a wee bit of bread crust again. The base of the back third of the palate is a more kind of roasty, toasty sort of thing. On top of that, you can feel the kind of cakey, spongy layer, which feels a little bit more grainy and almost toasty the further back that you go. And then yeah, I think the way that that goes together is quite nice. Yeah, so you get that nice kind of, you do get that nice sort of cakey, the cakey spongy there. It has a wee bit of dryness to it, as we say. And then on top of that, you can get some of the kind of yeasty qualities out of this beer. So the yeasty qualities that sit on top of the back third of your palate in this one, again, they're quite interesting. It's like a sort of sweeter, cakey note that you get in there. So you can feel a little bit of an almost, like that, if you think about a cake and you get the kind of toasty edge of the sort of toasted edge of the cake on the bacon tray, you get that. But then inside you've got a more kind of dense, just doughy, like almost like doughy part of the cake. That's how the yeasty character in this beer comes off. It's got a little bit of a toasty edge to it, a more kind of doughy, yeah, a more sort of doughy, yeah, cakey vibe to it. So yeah, it works. It does work really well. This one, to be honest with you. So yeah, I do like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. So yeah, toasty. Yeah, toasty kind of backbone to it, as we say on the back third of the palate. That a very thick and slightly more bitter, grainy kind of cakey there, and then on top of that you've got the yeasty notes. So definitely on the back third of the palate, this beer follows the regular pattern. The flavour is a bit taller, then as you come further forward, the flavour condenses down as you go into the middle third of the palate. So yeah, that works. But on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there, and that gives you a wee bit of bitterness. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a smooth kind of, it does have a little bit of a smoother herbally kind of thing. And as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity to it. But round the front curve of the palate, it's a wee bit lighter and kind of grassy. You don't expect these pastry stouts to be, you know, it's still big and hoppy in a sense. This one kind of follows through with that. You do have a little bit of that kind of typical smooth green component there. But let's focus on the front third of your palate. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a kind of bready, cakey build up in there. You can feel it's a little bit more bitter than the base of that front third of your palate. The base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of smooth, and it is a little bit of a more kind of smooth, you know, sort of cakey vibe, and a wee bit more of a kind of oaty character as well. So I do like how that goes together in this one, actually. Yeah, the way that that goes together is yeah, the way that this goes together is really nice. The fruity side of the beer I do like in this one. I can certainly appreciate that. So yeah, you get that cakey backbone, the smooth, spongy undertone, but a wee bit of that oaty smoothness there, and then the oily bubble on top. So the fruity side of the beer for me, you get that cakey note sitting underneath it, but you get a wee bit of raisiny sharpness on top. a wee bit of that kind of pruny, yeah, a wee bit of that kind of pruny note underneath, that kind of dry fruity kind of thing. Then the base of the back half of that front third of your palate is a wee bit more kind of dry and figgy, but again, as I say, you've got that sort of cakey undertone to it, which is quite interesting. But as you move further forward into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a distinctly more kind of juicy black curranty vibe and a wee bit of that more oily blackberry sitting on top of it. I really like how all of that goes together in this one. So yeah, it works. It absolutely works. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite nice and juicy and sweet, so I like that. I do like the fruity side of this beer. And in fairness, this beer, as much as I say I'm not a great fan of pastry stouts, this one has kind of grown on me over the course of drinking it. So maybe I need to give this style a wee bit more of a chance. I do have another pastry stout or what I suspect is going to be a pastry stout in the fridge, and that's a Dutch one. So we'll see how we get on with that. And if I like that one, I will maybe need to think about giving this style a wee bit more kind of leeway, if you like. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer, to be honest with you. So let's round off with a quick look at the mouthfeel. So overall, I would say that this beer is pretty full-bodied. Yeah, it's a full-bodied beer. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It's just a big oily kind of slick thing, if we can say that. Big oily slick beer. In terms of IBUs, I think this one must be about 50 or 60 IBUs. It's got a bit of bitterness from the cakey side of things, and there's a wee touch from the hops as well. But yeah, it's mainly the kind of malty side of this beer that's giving it the bitterness. But yeah, the malt base is mainly kind of savoury, as you'd expect from a pastry stout. You've got that thick kind of cakey vibe to it, a bit of chocolatey dryness, a bit of sweetness as well, and then you've got that big oily fruity character coming out of it. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. Yeah, gets a big thumbs up from me, this one. In terms of pastry stouts, this is one that could convince me that I like pastry stouts, but I'm still, as I say, I'm still not overly convinced by this style. I mean, I like it, the cakey vibe that it has is quite nice, and the fruity side of it is quite nice as well. But yeah, still not. If I had to pick, pastry stouts would come at the back of the queue compared to an Imperial coffee stout or a Imperial milk or even an old school Russian Imperial stout. I like all three of those better than I do the pastry stouts. But yeah, this is a nice example of the pastry stout. I will give it that. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review then. So this one is the S'mores, an Imperial pastry stout with chocolate, marshmallows, and graham crackers from Basqueland Brewing Project in Hernani, Euskadi, the Basqueland country, or Basque country, should we say, in the north of Spain. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Basqueland Brewing and Basqueland Brewing Project, whatever name it is they're actually going by these days. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, let me know some other Spanish and Euskadian breweries, and we will see about looking at those in the future. But Slàinte just now, Skål, cheers, Topa, check out Basqueland Brewing if you haven't already. Slàinte, Skål, cheers.